And welcome back to Wake Up America. I'm Tom Basili. Censorship during COVID. People with conflicting viewpoints on COVID-19 were canceled and even vilified because they didn't fit the narrative of the government public health officials. It was one of the biggest scandals and violations of fundamental rights during the pandemic. Now, the new Civil Liberties Alliance is representing folks who were victims of censorship in a major lawsuit challenging the federal government's violation of the First Amendment. Joining us now for more on this case is one of the plaintiffs, Mark Chengizi, and attorney Sheng Li. Mark and Sheng, thank you so much for joining us. So many people were impacted by this. Mark, I want to go to you first. You were censored when you shared your viewpoints that conflicted with the government's line. What did you say that was so controversial?
Oh, yeah. Not only did I not say anything special, I linked to data and studies that were on the NIH servers. Right? So this is government servers with papers on masks and potentially harms for masks. So I was censored many, many times. There's a long list of, and eventually permanently suspended. And again, many times stating my own opinion about the harms of the interventions, or saying the actual infection fatality rates of COVID rather than exaggerating them. And I just wanted to mention, it's not mere censorship. When a voice is completely suspended, that's memory holding, because all of one's past statements are gone. Anybody that quotes what you said, those quotes are suddenly gone. Yeah. It's memory holding, which is much more severe than censorship.
Yeah, and look, a lot of that data was proven to be false. A lot of the data that we were hearing about mortality rates, cases, death rates, that all proved to be, in many respects, a fiction. And the NIH and the CDC had to admit that. Sheng, it seems to be that there's a pretty clear case for illegal suppression of speech by the government in a lot of different circumstances. But what about social media companies, since they're private?
Well, you normally would think of social media companies as being private companies that can do whatever they want. But here, what was happening was the government was coming in and coercing and cajoling these companies. It's going on, the White House is having press releases saying these companies, by letting folks like Mark basically tell the truth about what's going on with COVID, they're killing people. And the White House is going to do something to these companies. It was like saying, that's a nice social media company you have there. Shame if something happened to it. And when the government does that and threatens or induces a private company to suppress speech, that's a violation of the First Amendment.
Mark, what was the impact of you on the censorship? So why specifically are you suing?
Oh, I mean, anybody, one of the reasons maybe that I'm point on this is I have a free expression research institute. I've been a scientist for many years. I have books on the origins of emotional expression. So I'm a scientist, and I became very outspoken on the free expression side and freedom side. And I take a very scientific approach to understanding free expression. It's like the free market. You can't have centrally controlled economies. You'll just end up with long lines waiting for cheese. And if you have centrally controlled marketplace of ideas that just become centrally controlled, you will not arrive at the truth. Free expression is the mechanism by which we find the truth. It is not something that needs to be controlled.
It also impacts your credibility as a scientist and as a professional. And so many doctors were impacted by this. Many of those doctors who signed the Great Barrington Declaration, for instance, were vilified. Many of them got fired because they just didn't toe the line. And many of them ended up being correct. Sheng, Missouri v. Biden, the lawsuit challenging the censorship was filed in May of last year. So much more information has come out about the government pressuring those companies, as you said, about the vaccine's effectiveness or lack of effectiveness, about the impact of lockdowns and the origins of COVID. Is all of that relevant to the cover-up? And does that kind of help your case in some fashion?
Oh, definitely. When we filed this case, it was before the Missouri v. Biden case and before the Twitter files. And we alleged that the government was forcing Twitter. There was all kinds of public statements, surely, but we also said there must be also all kinds of private cooperation going on. And then just a few months later, the Twitter files dropped, showing, in fact, everything that we said, what we alleged was happening, was in fact happening, that the government was identifying people and saying, hey, these guys are troublemakers, why don't you do something about them? And Twitter just said, sure. And that evidence that's since come out strengthens and in fact proves our case that there was state action and state coercion in this case.
Real quick, 10 seconds. What's the next step here? When do you expect to have your day in court? When do you expect this to be resolved?
We had oral arguments yesterday before the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Okay.
And the judges there were very engaged in this. And because this is a new sort of, we haven't seen private government alliance like this to violate civil liberties in the past. So the judges were very engaged, and we're
all right. Terrific. Well, so many people were impacted by this. We're definitely going to continue to follow it. Mark Changizi and Sheng Li, thank you so much. Appreciate you both.
Thank you.
Coming up next, the indictment